Christmas is supposed to be magical, a time of joy, family, and wonder. But for some families, Christmas brings something else entirely, something that watches from the shadows, something that waits. The Morrison family, David, Sarah, and their 2 children, Emma, age 7, and Michael, age 10, learned this truth the hard way in December of 1994. They had just moved into a beautiful Victorian home in rural Vermont, a fixer-upper they'd purchased for a steal. The previous owners had been eager to sell, practically giving it away. The Morrisons thought they'd found their forever home. They were wrong. What you're about to hear is based on police reports, psychiatric evaluations, and interviews with the surviving family members. Names have been changed, but the events are real. This is their story. This is their warning. Before we dive into this chilling tale, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you never miss our weekly horror stories. If you're brave enough to make it to the end, let me know by typing "Christmas Visitor" in the comments. And tell me, do you still believe in the magic of Christmas? You might change your mind. Now let's begin this terrifying journey. December 1st, 1994. The Morrisons arrived at their new home on a grey, cold afternoon. The Victorian house stood 3 stories tall, painted a faded blue-grey with white trim. It had been built in 1887 and had remarkable original details: crown moulding, hardwood floors, a grand staircase, and most notably, a ballroom on the 3rd floor. Sarah Morrison's journal describes that first day. The house is even more beautiful than we remembered. The children are excited, running through the rooms, claiming their bedrooms. David is already planning renovations. The only odd thing, the realtor left immediately after handing over the keys. Didn't even stay to answer questions. When I called to thank her, she said, "Just promise me you'll leave before Christmas Eve." I laughed. She didn't. Then she hung up. On December 3rd, while exploring the attic, 10-year-old Michael found something. Michael came downstairs carrying an old wooden box, Sarah wrote. Inside were Christmas decorations, beautiful antique ornaments, some dating back to the early 1900s, but underneath the ornaments was a leather journal and a collection of old photographs. The photographs showed Christmas celebrations in this very house, dating back over a century. Happy families around Christmas trees, children opening presents, normal holiday scenes. Except in every single photograph, there was one figure that appeared wrong, blurred, out of focus. A woman in Victorian dress standing in the background, always in shadow, always slightly obscured. In every photo, different families, different decades, same woman. The journal belonged to someone named Margaret Holloway, dated 1923. The first entry was cheerful, describing Christmas preparations. But as Sarah read further, the tone changed dramatically. Margaret Holloway's journal became increasingly disturbing. Sarah copied some entries into her own journal. December 10th, 1923. We have begun decorating for Christmas. The children are so excited, but I cannot shake the feeling we are being watched. I hear footsteps in the ballroom at night, though no one is there. December 15th, 1923. The children refuse to sleep in their rooms. They say a woman visits them at night, a woman in an old dress who stands at the foot of their beds and stares. I told them it was just dreams, but I have seen her too. In the hallway, in the ballroom, always watching, never moving, just watching. December 20th, 1923. We tried to leave. She won't let us. Every road leads back to the house. It's impossible, but it's true. We drive for hours and end up in our own driveway. My husband thinks I'm going mad. Maybe I am. But the children see her too. We all see her. December 23rd, 1923. She wants something. She has always wanted something. Every family that has lived here has left, fled. But we didn't listen to the warnings. We stayed too long. Christmas Eve is tomorrow. God help us. That was Margaret Holloway's last entry. Sarah looked up the family. They had all died in the house on Christmas Eve. 1923, carbon monoxide poisoning, according to the official report. But Sarah found newspaper articles that told a different story. The neighbors had reported hearing screaming. The police found the family in the ballroom frozen in terror, with no source of carbon monoxide anywhere in the house. That night, December 3rd, 7-year-old Emma woke up screaming. She said a woman was standing in her room, Sarah wrote. Not by the door, not by the window, right next to her bed. A woman in a black Victorian dress with a high collar. The woman didn't move, didn't speak, just stared down at Emma with pale eyes. When Emma screamed, the woman didn't react, didn't blink, just slowly turned her head toward the door and walked out. Not walked, glided, like she was on wheels. Emma said she could see through her slightly, like looking through fog. David insisted it was just a nightmare triggered by the old photographs. But when they checked Emma's room, there were wet footprints on the floor, leading from the closet to the bed, and back to the closet. Small, old-fashioned shoe prints. They were still wet. The incidents escalated quickly. On December 5th, the family Christmas tree, which they had just purchased and decorated, was found completely stripped in the morning. Every ornament removed and arranged in a perfect circle on the ballroom floor. In the center of the circle was a single antique photograph, a young woman in Victorian dress. Written on the back in faded ink, Clara, 1887, forever waiting. David contacted the realtor, demanding answers. She finally admitted the truth. The house had a history. 23 families had lived there since 1887. 23 families had left abruptly, most before completing a single year. All of them left around Christmas. All of them reported the same thing. A woman in Victorian dress, watching, waiting, growing more aggressive as Christmas Eve approached. Sarah became obsessed with finding out who Clara was. She visited the local historical society and discovered the truth. Clara Whitmore had been the original owner's daughter. Born in 1869, she was engaged to be married on Christmas Eve, 1887. The wedding was to be held in the ballroom of her father's newly built home. But 2 weeks before the wedding, Clara's fiancé, a man named Thomas Bennett, died in an accident, thrown from his horse. Clara was devastated. On Christmas Eve, wearing her wedding dress, she went to the ballroom where the ceremony should have taken place. She locked the door from the inside. When her family finally broke down the door on Christmas morning, they found her hanging from the chandelier. But here's where the story gets strange. Clara's father, grief-stricken, refused to bury her. He had her body preserved and kept her in the house, in a sealed room on the 3rd floor, still in her wedding dress. He believed she would wake up if he just waited long enough. He celebrated Christmas with her body every year until he died in 1902. After his death, the house was sold. Clara was finally buried, but according to local legend, her spirit never left. She was still waiting for her Christmas wedding, still waiting for Thomas, and she was angry that other families were celebrating what she never could. On December 10th, Michael had his encounter. He was in the bathroom when he heard music. A music box playing a Christmas carol, but wrong, discordant, off-key. He followed the sound to the 3rd floor, to the ballroom. The music box sat in the center of the empty room, spinning slowly. Next to it was a wedding veil, and written in frost on the ballroom windows were words, "Where is he?" Michael ran. But as he reached the stairs, he looked back. Clara was standing in the ballroom doorway. This time she was more solid, more real, and she was crying. Black tears running down her white face. She raised one hand toward Michael, and he heard her voice for the first time. It sounded like wind through a graveyard. "Help me find him, help me find Thomas." That night, the Morrisons held a family meeting. David wanted to leave immediately. Sarah agreed. But when they tried to pack, they discovered something terrifying. Every door in the house led back inside. Front door, back door, even the windows, climb out a first-floor window, and you'd find yourself climbing into a third-floor room. The house wouldn't let them leave. David called the police. When the officers arrived, they could enter the house normally, but the Morrisons couldn't leave. The police thought it was some kind of hoax or mental breakdown. They left, promising to send a mental health crisis team. The Morrisons were trapped. Clara began appearing more frequently, no longer just at night. She would manifest in mirrors, in windows, in the shadows, and she was communicating more clearly. She wanted to complete her wedding. She wanted her Christmas Eve ceremony, and she had chosen her participants. David would stand in as Thomas, the groom, and Emma, 7-year-old Emma with her blonde hair and innocent face, would be her flower girl. The wedding would take place on Christmas Eve at midnight, just as it should have in 1887. If they agreed, Clara would let them leave after the ceremony. If they refused, they would join the others who hadn't left in time. Sarah's journal describes what happened next. We found them in the basement, skeletons, dozens of skeletons, families who had lived here before, families who hadn't escaped, some wearing rotted Christmas clothes, one skeleton still clutching a child's toy. We are not the first. We won't be the last unless we find a way to break this curse. Sarah formulated a plan. If Clara wanted Thomas, they would give her Thomas. Sort of. Through her research, Sarah discovered where Thomas Bennett was buried. The cemetery was only 3 miles away. If they could somehow get there, if they could bring back something of Thomas's, anything, maybe they could break the curse. Maybe they could give Clara what she needed to move on. But they couldn't leave the house. So Sarah decided to do something desperate. She would send Michael. Children seemed to have more freedom in the house. Clara paid less attention to them. Michael was small enough to fit through the old laundry chute that led from the 3rd floor to the outside coal delivery door in the foundation. It was risky. If Clara caught him, if she realized what they were doing, there was no telling what would happen. December 24th, Christmas Eve. At 10 p.m., while Clara was manifesting in the ballroom, she seemed strongest there, Michael made his attempt. He climbed into the old laundry chute, a narrow shaft that hadn't been used in decades. The descent was terrifying. He could hear Clara's voice echoing through the walls, singing Christmas carols. But wrong, all wrong. He made it outside, the first member of the family to leave the property in 3 weeks. He ran through the snow toward the cemetery, following the directions Sarah had memorized from maps. Meanwhile, in the house, Clara realized someone was missing. The temperature dropped 40 degrees instantly. Every light in the house went out, and Clara appeared, more solid than ever before, furious. "Where is the boy?" Her voice shook the walls. "The ceremony must have everyone, everyone." Michael found Thomas Bennett's grave. It was old, weathered, almost impossible to read. But he dug through the snow with his bare hands until he found it. He needed something, anything from the grave. The ground was frozen solid. He couldn't dig. Then he noticed something. The gravestone itself was cracked, broken, and in the crack was something small. A locket, a gold locket with the initials C.W., Clara Whitmore. Thomas had been buried with Clara's locket, a token of their love. Michael grabbed it and ran. Getting back into the house was harder than getting out. Clara knew. She was waiting. When Michael climbed back through the coal door, he found himself not in the basement, but in the ballroom. Clara was there, and she was no longer even partially transparent. She looked completely human, completely alive, and completely enraged. "You dare violate his rest?" she screamed. "You dare!" But then she saw what Michael was holding. The locket. Her locket. The one she'd given Thomas before he died. The one she thought was lost forever. Clara's expression changed. The rage melted into something else. Confusion, then recognition, then grief. He kept it? Her voice was different now, softer, human. He kept it even in death? Michael, terrified but brave, held out the locket. He never stopped loving you, Clara. He's been waiting for you. Not here, on the other side. You don't need a wedding. You need to go to him. Clara took the locket with trembling hands. As soon as she touched it, something changed. The ballroom filled with light, not harsh but warm, golden. And in that light, a figure appeared, a man in Victorian dress. Thomas. "Clara," he said, "I've been calling you for so long, but you couldn't hear me through your grief. Come home. Our wedding awaits, in a place where there's no pain, no death, only love." Clara stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "I've been so angry, so alone. I thought you'd abandoned me." "Never," Thomas said, "never. I've been here all along, waiting. Come with me now, our Christmas Eve wedding, our forever." Clara turned to the Morrison family. "I'm sorry, I was so lost in my pain, I couldn't see past it. I kept families here because I couldn't bear others celebrating what I'd lost. Forgive me." Sarah stepped forward. "We forgive you, Clara. Go to him. Find your peace." Clara smiled, the first real smile any of them had seen. She took Thomas's hand. Together they began to fade. As they did, she looked back one last time. "Merry Christmas," she whispered. "Merry Christmas." And then they were gone. The light faded. The house seemed to exhale, a long, relieved breath it had been holding for over a century. The oppressive feeling lifted. The doors, when David tried them, opened normally. The curse was broken. It was 2 a.m. on Christmas morning when the Morrisons finally left the house. They drove to a hotel and slept for 14 hours. When they woke, it seemed almost like a shared nightmare. But the locket was real, sitting on the hotel nightstand, and their hands were still raw from their ordeal. They never went back to the house. They forfeited their investment, left everything behind, and moved back to their old city. The house was sold again, this time honestly disclosed as a former paranormal site. A young couple bought it, historians interested in Victorian architecture. They've lived there for 30 years now. No incidents, no hauntings. Clara is finally at peace. The Morrison family rarely speaks about what happened in that house. David passed away in 2015. Sarah lives in a retirement community in Florida. Emma, now in her 30s, is a therapist specializing in trauma. And Michael became a paranormal investigator, helping families dealing with situations similar to what his family experienced. I interviewed Michael for this story. He's 41 now, married with children of his own. He still has the locket, Clara's locket. He keeps it as a reminder that not all ghost stories end in tragedy. Sometimes they end in redemption. People think hauntings are about evil spirits, Michael told me. But most of the time they're about pain, about unfinished business. Clara wasn't evil. She was heartbroken. She was stuck. And sometimes all a spirit needs is someone to help them find what they lost. The Morrisons could have died in that house, like so many families before them, but they didn't. They survived because they chose compassion over fear. They helped Clara instead of fighting her. This Christmas, as you celebrate with your loved ones, remember, not all visitors come through the front door. Some have been there all along, waiting, watching, hoping for someone to see them, really see them, and maybe, just maybe, help them find their way home. If this story touched your heart or sent chills down your spine, make sure you're subscribed for more incredible tales every week. Did you make it to the end? Type Christmas Visitor in the comments and tell me, would you have helped Clara or would you have run? What's the scariest Christmas experience you've ever had? Check out the playlist on your screen for more holiday horror stories. And remember, this Christmas, when you hear footsteps in the attic or creaking in the night, maybe it's not Santa Claus. Maybe it's someone else. Someone who needs your help. Merry Christmas and stay safe.